What you know what, just to be safe, thing you did end up saving your ass later. Learned CPR and first aid. Had to give CPR to a family friend when she collapsed from a heart attack, and thankfully she was brought back after being down for 15 minutes. She only had minor memory problems and mostly just couldn't remember that day. She's still here and kicking years later. Was delivering pizza in a sketchy block of town late at night. Huge apartment complex with multiple buildings. Walking up to the front door, I noticed a couple guys wearing dark clothing about 100 feet behind me walking in my direction. Delivery was on the second floor, and by the time I reached her door I heard the main door of the apartment complex open and close. She used a CC for the order and tipped in cash, so when I was putting the receipt into my bag, where I kept my cash, I actually pulled the rest of the cash out and stuffed it into my inner jacket pocket just to be safe, leaving just the change I had that night in the bag. Started to head down the stairs back out to my car, and two guys jumped out from behind the stairs, and the one had a gun pointed at me and told me to give them the money. I quickly handed them my bag filled with quarters, and they took off towards the back entrance of the apartment complex. I never ran so fast in my life back to my car. I wanted to make sure I was as far away as possible before they realized they robbed me of $3 in quarters. I used to be a shift manager at a pizza place, and I refused to send my drivers to certain areas at dusk, night because of this. I'm just glad you made it out safely. I once had to explain to a guy that the motel he was staying in, despite being 1 mile from the pizza spot, was not a location we'd be sending drivers, due to its reputation. He got pissed, swore at me, and even threatened to come down there. Like, yeah, exactly my point. Also, if you come down here we can definitely make you a pizza. God, that place sucked. I dropped my high school girlfriend off, then for some reason I locked the passenger door. Not 10 minutes later I was stopped at a red light and some scummy looking dude tried to open up the door. I have no idea why I locked that door after she got out. I really didn't have a habit of that. No idea what would have happened if that guy got in my truck. Something similar happened to me. I was dropping my friend off at home. He lived in a sketchy neighborhood. I had my driver's side door locked, and as soon as he got out I immediately locked the other one. These three girls come running out of the bushes trying to open my car doors. One jumped on my hood and I fucking gunned it. She rolled off my car. The other chucked her drink at my driver's side door. I'm terrified to think about what they were going to do to me. Was on a side-by-side vehicle mudding on some property. A friend and I were visiting. Mid-ride, I turn to my friend and say, "Hey, you should probably buckle your seatbelt, just in case." Not 1 minute later did he lose control and slide front first into a tree, going about as fast as this thing could go given the conditions. Both of us were okay, but the side-by-side was completely ruined. He looked at me right after and his eyes were as big as dinner plates. My dad lost his glasses once. He was going to just use his old prescription, but last minute decided to just go to the optometrist anyway in case something changed. Turns out he had a tear in his retina and was booked for surgery within 24 hours. It was bad enough they said he probably would have gone blind really soon had they not caught it when then did. $5 breakage insurance on a rental surfboard. Broke that fucker clean in half in my first 10 minutes. Not my ass, but I was getting ready for school whilst mum was vomiting in the bathroom. She said it was just a stomach bug and to just go to school, but mentioned her arm hurt. Something didn't sit right, so I called the ambulance from downstairs. They arrived and took her into the ambulance. She then proceeded to have 3 cardiac arrests and needed defibrillated each time. A double bypass later and she was up and about within a month. Paramedics told me she would have died 5 minutes after I left, if I hadn't called. You saved your mom. Smart listening to your intuition. Snow chains at the bottom of the mountain. A bunch of cars passed me on a clear road on the way up with several warnings all the way up. I saw a local throwing on chains with no snow in the area. I decided to be safe and put them on. 30 minutes later I was in one of the worst snow driving conditions I've ever seen. Whiteout conditions in a snowstorm that eventually resulted in the complete shutdown of the roads. I passed car crash after car crash with just enough traction to feel somewhat comfortable moving 15 miles an hour. Anyone heading to Tahoe needs chains and chains that fit. Don't fuck around. I don't care if you have a 4-wheel drive. Driving through Tahoe and Mammoth during snowstorms is no joke. Literally sunny with no clouds to blinding white darkness in an hour. If a local that is used to driving in the snow is putting on chains, you know that shit is going to be bad. This advice is also good for swimming at a beach, particularly on islands. If locals aren't swimming at it, you didn't just discover a secluded beach. It's likely life-threateningly dangerous. The ocean is relentless and doesn't care if you've just made a mistake. Had some weird achy symptoms and went to the doctor even though I figured I was probably overreacting. Turns out I had cancer. My problem is I'm almost always aching somewhere. I am a bit of a hypochondriac, so I hate reading people saying, minor symptom, became cancer lol. One day I was attempting to make carioca for the first time, a kind of Filipino fried mochi, and after I popped them in the oil, I settled in and watched them carefully. I never wear an apron whilst cooking, but for some reason I figured why not this time, and as soon as I stepped out of range of the fryer, they all exploded. Turns out, carioca can form an impermeable shell when fried, so pressure built up inside until they popped and sprayed hot oil all over the kitchen. Of course, I was safely away reaching for an apron and was completely dumbfounded. Made sure to punch some holes in all subsequent batches. Of course, once I cleaned the kitchen, I ate them and they were delicious. 10 out of 10 highly recommend. Everything tastes nicer after it tries to kill you. Normally I'm pretty impressionable and cave to peer pressure, but this one time when I was younger I was hanging with my friends and a couple of older, high school guys I'd only met that day. The girls were all fawning over them, but I could tell they were idiots. When they all wanted to go for a drive with the guys, I thought, nah, I don't trust these guys and I think it's best I just call my parents and go home. I got a call the next morning from one of the girls who was passenger. One of the high school boys was driving, they'd had a serious crash and one of the girls wasn't wearing her seatbelt and hit her head on the dash and was in a coma for 6 months. She was in intensive care and rehabilitation for years. Still can't believe of all the days I decided not to go with the flow, it probably saved my life. Terribly sad about my friend. We were really close but she never came right, and her personality changed. I still wonder how successful she might have been and if we'd still be friends if that hadn't happened to her. Really sad. Similar story here. 3 older kids were going out drinking one night and my girlfriend invited me to go with them. I decided to stay home that night. They went drinking and driving. They crashed around midnight, in the middle of winter. My girlfriend was laying in the snow for 8+ hours, until she was found by a bus driver. She was paralyzed from the waist down. The 2 guys were killed in the crash. Very graphic scene, very awful deaths. Never, ever drink and drive. Was watching my toddler nephew and he'd found a metal straw somewhere in the house and started playing with it. He was just tapping stuff and waving it around, but I just read a story on Reddit about a woman who got completely fucked up by a metal straw when she fell and it impaled her face, so I took the metal one from nephew and gave him a soft, squishy silicone one to play with instead. I'm not exaggerating when I say less than 5 minutes later, he fell like toddlers do and I saw the silicone straw all smushed into his cheek. I had to just sit for a while after that, lol. Might sound ridiculous, but many years ago when I did my mandatory community service, was a thing in Germany as a counterpart to mandatory military service, there was a particular day in a pretty harsh winter. I usually went to work with my bike, as the streets were cleared of snow and ice anyway. At this day, I didn't take my helmet off because when I arrived at the place I worked I immediately started to shovel snow and didn't even walk inside first. My workplace was a huge and old 4-story hostel in the woods. The roof was packed with snow and there were massive icicles hanging from the gutters. When a coworker asked me why I decided to look like an idiot with my helmet on, I jokingly replied it was for serious security reasons. A few moments later an icicle block fell down and hit me on the head and the shoulders. The impact was so brutal that it made me fall down on my knees. Shoulders were bruised but my head was fine. I really don't know what could have happened if I didn't wear my stupid bicycle helmet, for fun, that morning. Serious injury for sure. Grabbed a helmet when riding a bike down a steep hill as a kid. Normally didn't but I ended up falling at top speed and breaking my helmet and chipping 3 teeth. Could have been my head that was broken. Oh, I did the same except instead of eating dirt, there was a car coming up the bottom of the hill around a blind curve. I was 11. Unsure whether or not my family is better off with me having made that choice, given a bunch of cascading effects, but I guess being alive is kinda nice. Wear your helmets.